Hi there, and thanks for tuning in. My name's Chris Rogan, and I'm Director and Lead Consultant at Unleashed. And Unleashed is a boutique consultancy business that provides services in cybersecurity and digital transformation. And this slide deck is one that I put together and delivered about 2 years ago for the Centre for Assessment in conjunction with their sister organisation, the Business Growth Hub. And really what it was to tackle was the concept that management standards such as Cyber Essentials and ISO 27001 could help you meet legal requirements such as the General Data Protection Regulations. And during the lockdown, it's actually become a subject that has come to mind, and we've had a few contacts from different customers asking us how things have changed during this time. So I kind of just inserted this next slide on our thoughts from the lockdown. I wanted to revisit the idea that Cyber Essentials and ISO 27001 specifically could help you meet compliance to laws like GDPR and the Data Protection Act. The world has certainly changed. I don't think 4 months ago, at the point when I'm recording this video, that anyone thought we were going to be sat working from home for that long, and there was a rush to do it. IT companies and providers and internal IT departments had to move quickly. The notice that we got to close was very quick, and there was a big chunk of work that we in the IT community had to do to get people to work from home. And that's obviously created new issues that probably haven't been considered by companies and their risk management teams, and it's something that I want to sort of touch upon in this presentation as I redeliver it and try and consider the changes that have happened at this point in time. So the aims of the session are really to talk more about why cybersecurity and data protection are very linked together. Cybersecurity is that nerdy part of IT where you're worrying about hackers and you're putting firewalls in places and you're doing all this cool stuff with different technologies to try and stop hackers getting into your systems. But data protection is this fundamental aspect of it where you've got data on your employees, on your suppliers, on your customers that you need to keep safe, and that is your legal and moral obligation as a business to keep that data safe. And we want to talk about why cybersecurity has got to be a bigger problem over recent years. Why is it getting bigger and bigger? I want to cover off some of my own experiences in cybersecurity, talk about some types of attacks, and then I want to move on to why standards, and I will touch upon more on Cyber Essentials rather than ISO 27001, but I want to talk to why those standards are important to help you maintain your compliance with GDPR. So if you're sitting comfortably, I'd like to take you on a journey that I like to call Carrying Up the Cyber. Now, this is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek slide because at the time, my business was very pragmatic on the GDPR phenomenon, where a lot of companies were pushing sales. They had their marketing engines basically spamming you constantly. I don't think anyone missed the emails at the time a couple of years ago on GDPR. And we were very pragmatic about it. We knew that there was no legal test cases. It's going to take us a long time to understand what the actual enforcement policies will be of the Information Commissioner's Office and how everything would pan out. So we were advising our customers to spend wisely. Yes, they probably needed to do something, but they didn't have to go out and buy all these latest products and these consultancies because they were probably going to end up paying more than what they needed. And that was our take on it. So I did feel it was a bit of a farce at the time that was going on, and there was a big industry behind it. And that's why I called it a bit of a carry on. So with any luck, at the moment you could probably hear a modem sound going off in the background. And this was the sound to my 90s, and these different technologies were sort of in place. Modems started off as your main way of accessing the internet. And slowly in the noughties and moving on, we've had different broadband technologies that we've moved from this slow, clunky dial-up world where it took ages for an image to load to now going into the point where web pages load almost instantly. We've got a slew of technologies in our households that are permanently connected, and the same goes for our businesses. And we've gone from speeds of 14.4K to 10 gigabytes. Now, that might not mean anything to non-technical viewers of this video, but I like to use this comparison. If you think about it in the 1990s and envisage that the speed of the internet was like the small little door, it was like Tom and Jerry's mouse door, And if a mouse is coming out through that door, they're likely to see another one coming through. And as the speeds of bandwidth has got better, as we call it, and broadband's got super fast, things have changed. And my analogy at the other end there is you could quite easily hide behind an aircraft being taken into the hangar, so a person could hide behind it. So you've got that obscurity. So as you've got bigger bandwidth, you've got bigger open doors, and they are into your business, into your IT systems, and that's really what has happened with this change of the internet speeds that have happened. That you're not going to notice hackers getting into your network. If you would have noticed somebody slowing down your internet connection and causing problems, and it's something I'll come to a bit later on in this slide deck. As I said, slower connections are like smaller doors, meaning you're more likely to notice somebody going past you. So this has changed phenomenally. The attack surface has grown. You've not got just your broadband connection, you've got your Wi-Fi connection, you've got a complexity of things, and everybody must have that new technology. They must have the tablet, the phone, all these other devices. The consumerization of IT has become a phenomenon that's happened over the last 20 years, and we're all after that latest gadget. And they, in turn, have become part of the attack surface that an attacker could exploit. So in cybersecurity, we've got a number of terms that are important to know. Threats, vulnerabilities, attacks, and countermeasures. Now, a threat is something that has potential to harm your business in this case. A vulnerability is a known weakness in your company's systems. An attack is an event when generally an attacker uses a combination of the threat and vulnerability to get something out of your company or cause harm in some sort of way. And a countermeasure is what you'd expect. It's a measure you take as a business to prevent all those occurring to cause harm to your business. And types of these threats and vulnerabilities are listed on here, and they all have some humorous names: Smurfs, Fraggles, Bonks, Teardrops. We've got a huge list of them, and you don't really need to know what they are. They're actually not all that important for most general business owners to know. But there are certain ones that you will have heard of, like distributed denial of service, and sort of the weeks leading up to me re-recording this presentation, there was a big event with Amazon servers where they've had a distributed denial of service attack, where the servers have been trying to overload, but Amazon servers being so good they were managing to cope with this attack. And generally what happens is there's hackers take over certain computers on the internet, and they use those computers, generally without the users themselves knowing, to launch these distributed attacks from various different PCs and servers all over the world that converge on one type of system. And in this case it was AWS. But they're a very likely attack, but one of the most likely ones to happen to your business is going to be a phishing attack, where you receive an email that pretends to be something it's not, like an invoice, and that then generally exploits another aspect, which is your social engineering. So by making that phishing attack look very real, requesting a payment or an invoice, your users will likely click the link and then be tricked into typing in their security credentials, their username and password, which then allows certain types of attack to then go onto your systems and potentially send itself through your address books and attack other companies that are in your supply chain. And that's been quite common. It's one that we encounter quite a lot when people are coming to us for advice. To try and make things a little bit more real, I've got this visualization now. Different providers in the cybersecurity industry have different visualization maps like this. This is just one particular one that I've picked out to show you. What happens is all the technologies that provide actually have some telemetry systems in them, so they're collecting data from the deployments they have and then sending that back to their central servers to create these maps. And in this one in particular, it's a distributed denial of service attack map. So you can see systems coming from China and elsewhere causing issues in the United States, and then there's stuff going in from South America into the US, and all these things are happening around the world. There's different attacks going on at once, and things are moving. And this is largely just to give you an impression that yes, these things are real. It might not feel real if it's never happened to your company, but the risk is certainly real. My own real experience with cybersecurity was actually probably 20 odd years ago when I started working in the IT industry as an IT manager. And I was lucky enough to be working for a construction company that had the repairs and maintenance contract at Sellafield. And as you'd expect, very secure site. But this was back in the early days of the internet, and going back to my original slides, um, with the internet connectivity, we literally just got our first permanently connected ISDN modem. Now I don't really want to labour the point of the speeds on it, but this thing was just this one up from having a phone line. The speeds was nowhere near broadband standard. Broadband was at least 10, probably 20 times or more the speed than what we had. So it was minimal what we had, but it was the first permanent connection that we had as a business, and most businesses would have had around the time. And the only reason I noticed we had an issue was because my tape backup had filled. We had a massive tape and it was all compressed, and we had a brand new server, and I couldn't really work out why it was filling up until I discovered that actually our server had been taken over to be used as a FTP server, which is file transfer, for an Italian guy trading his PlayStation games, and that was all because that we had an unupdated version of Windows on our server, and there was a vulnerability there. And that caused me really to up my game in cybersecurity in the company's game, and over the years we actually decided we were going to become a bit of a leader in it, and we got ISO 27001 accreditation. But what I felt was the main real world implication of not investing in cybersecurity was the potential to cause embarrassment to our customers. So while ourselves as business at the time weren't particularly IT literate, and in fact I remember putting the looking at the picture of the server, I remember putting that in and asking people if they wanted email accounts, and people turned their nose up at me and said, what do I need that for? And, the same people will probably now scream if their email's off for a nanosecond, but it was a different time. But I was most worried about the reputational damage that you could do just by association with an incident. So we were always quite worried about losing memory sticks, losing floppy disks back in the day, and it got us to the point where we built on that and used that something to make ourselves better than the competition. And that's really what I would advise most companies to look at, is when you're looking at the risks that could occur to your business, look at your supply chain, your customers, and whilst maybe your business couldn't be attacked, but what would be the reputational damage if you were? We now got GDPR where there's fines based on global turnover implied on you that could literally shut you down in some cases. But it is better just to not be that company and not be the one that's the weakest part of the chain. But real world cyber attacks that happen in most businesses, they're not sort of done in by hackers who are in darkened rooms out to get you. A lot of this stuff is automated, and you'll have seen things like this over the last number of 5, 6, 7 years, where you've got what we call crypto locker viruses. Now, the most common way I've seen these spread is because companies are downloading PDF files, generally off internet servers that have been compromised, and those PDF files have been edited, and they've clicked the files, and you've not got an up-to-date version of Adobe, and that then allows a piece of software to be installed that then goes off and encrypts your hard drive. Now these crypto locker viruses were actually pretty good in some respects. The customer service was reputed to be quite good, because if word got out that they didn't release your data when you paid the Bitcoin currency, so there's $300 on that screenshot there in Bitcoin, which is a digital currency which is completely untraceable. If you paid that and didn't get your data back, then people just wouldn't bother. But there is a cyber hygiene thing saying that if nobody actually pays, they'll stop bothering putting these out. So you shouldn't pay. But I was aware of a number of cases where companies had no option other than to pay. For our experiences in it, we actually found a couple of technical ways to get people's data back, but generally what we did is, those customers who did have those problems, they had good backups in place, and that was the main sort of countermeasure. It took us a bit of time, and we had to restore from backups, and there was inconvenience, but that's how we did it. These days, there's a few more technical ways of stopping those type of viruses. Endpoint protection software can actually see behavior that's not normal for you as a user. So if you never encrypt anything, you're not encrypting bank details or zip files as a habit, then it knows you don't normally do that, and it stops any encryption activity going on your machine that is out of the ordinary. And that's how these systems now save that. So real world cyber attacks. Now, a lot of small business attacks don't really go in the press because reputationally, as I've said, it's an issue, and they're not really talked about. They're not really that exciting either, because a lot of them are either gone unnoticed, or they're just small brands that nobody would have heard of if they go into the national press. So obviously Tesco, TalkTalk 3, Wonga, WPP and the NHS attacks have all been quite big events. Now TalkTalk's kind of the big one on there. There was a £400,000 fine, I believe, with the Information Commissioner's Office because of their data breach. They had a SQL injection issue on their website, and it allowed hackers to get into their systems and get that data. Tesco's bank actually had fraudsters withdrew money from about 20,000 bank accounts. The NHS attack was actually due to older unpatched systems that were using an old version of Microsoft's SMB file sharing technology, which was obsolete. But the NHS has a lot of machinery that can't be updated, or the software to can't be updated because of the huge expense on it. So it's not as simple as a lot of people said at the time, that their software was out of date in terms of Windows. So there was complexity there. And WPP was probably hit by a similar thing. I think it came from an accounts link that somebody had received from the Ukraine, and both WPP and NHS got hit by a crypto locker type virus. So these things happen. They happen to big companies, they happen to small companies, which goes less reported. But one thing that a hacker isn't is they're not like the ones in the movies. They're not like Sandra Bullock. They're not like the people in Sneakers. They're certainly not like War Games. Possibly a little bit more like the Hackers film, but unlikely, and definitely not like the Matrix. Nobody's sat there like Neo. They are pretty much similar to what you see on the FBI most wanted list for hackers, but I will guarantee that 99.9% of businesses in the UK will not be targeted by these people. Generally, these are considered black hat hackers, so we've got a bit of a spectrum there on the left-hand side. Now you've got white hat hackers, which are the good guys. They're the people who've got the certified ethical hacker. They're the ones that come and do your pen tests. They're the ones like us that you pay for to come and help you out with your security. And then you've got sort of different other guys on the spectrum: grey hat, green hat, red hat, blue hat. These people are not necessarily always working for the common good at certain times, and it gets a bit nuanced. The main hacker that's likely to have any impact on your business is going to be a script kiddie. Now, script kiddies aren't the most technically literate ones. They're the ones that can download tools that already exist. There's a tool called Kali Linux, which is freely available on the internet, and inside that it's got preloaded all the tools that white hat hackers use for doing pen testing and doing testing on your business to see how you fare against hacking. And generally what the script kiddies do, they cast a wide net. So they have deploy a tool, maybe sends out a lot of spam emails, phishing emails. You click on those, and they have servers that are ready to start harvesting those details and then doing something automatically with those details. So, a script kiddie doesn't really have that much skill, but they're good at deploying scripts that have probably already been created and shared by the black hat hackers. And they're the ones that you really need to consider. And this has led to the growing cybersecurity threat. So, we know it's growing, we know it's getting bigger and bigger. The technology is out there, it's quite simple. And the rise of connected devices, and as I said, you must have a tablet, a laptop, a phone. We've got every device we've got now is connected. Somebody was talking to me about a connected refrigerator a couple of weeks ago, and they wanted one. So in a domestic setting and in a business setting, we're getting more and more equipment online. In businesses, we're talking about the Internet of Things and having sensors and everything. So this has committed the UK government to doing something about it. Now, cybercrime now is like probably a third. Now, if you consider cybercrime on that diagram there, it looks quite small. It's not even a quarter yet. But other crime generally has some sort of cyber element in it. So there's a big overlap there. So it is a huge proportion of UK crime, and it's growing, and other sort of more violent crimes are actually decreasing in some respects. So that means that the government needs to do something about it, and there's technical skills to fight this is actually quite difficult. So the main way they're doing it is trying to get us into a point of cyber hygiene where we're doing the good things that will reduce our risk to these things. So one of the things they've invested in is obviously laws. So they can bring out laws that can kind of help, and that helps the police then arrest people. But the standards are generally the way that they have been going in recent years to try and get everybody up to a bare minimum baseline standard of cyber security. And if all businesses are on that, we have what we would call cyber hygiene, where we're all at a basic level. Cyber Essentials is one of the big ones, but obviously 27001 information security management is one that's been around a lot longer, and it's that gold standard that I've talked about. Probably for bigger businesses, and probably for those that are involved in more complicated supply chains. So just going back to my cyber terminology, I just wanted to compare that to how it goes with standards. So in standards, we've got risk assessments, vulnerabilities, quantification of risk, and mitigation stroke risk treatment plans. So we're essentially going from that world of real world practical things we can do to what we can do in paper and a systems point of view. And the two map quite well together. Most businesses I advise start with the risk assessment to look at, those vulnerabilities and threats that might be applicable to them. They list those vulnerabilities out, and then, this is not something that you can do to, absolutely guarantee your business isn't going to be affected. You've got to quantify that risk, and you've got to invest wisely. And no companies any size should throw limited amounts of money because of a threat. So part of what you do is you weight that, and you make your decisions about, if you're not involved with online commerce, you don't need to worry about protecting yourself about risks that affect online commerce only, and you weight them accordingly. And that's generally how I would advise most businesses, and certainly our customers when we're doing the consultancy work for them, to come up with their plan of what they're going to do. So as I've said during the presentation, there's an issue between laws and standards, or a parallel. And standards are something that you can meet to prove that you're meeting a bare minimum of a standard, and they generally go beyond the laws. So a law, you legally have to do that law. If you don't achieve that law, you're breaking the law. You're going to go to prison, or you're going to get fined. Standards, obviously, you invite the standards bodies and the auditors in, like Centre for Assessment. You invite them into your business, and you are proving to the world that you exceed those minimum standards. So you're doing more than the law, and this is where the cyber hygiene comes into it. By having a standard, you're likely to be doing more than the bare minimum, which actually reduces your risk as an organization, because it means you've taken a formalized approach to actually doing something in terms of cybersecurity. So when you come to things like GDPR and compliance to it, you're likely to be doing much better. So one of the things I said at the time when this presentation was written, and it goes back to my fast slide at the beginning, GDPR I did feel was a bit the next Y2K. There was a big sales drive on doing it. The engines of all these big IT providing companies all went mad. We were going to sell everything to everybody in the name of GDPR. Like I said, I took a bit more of a pragmatic approach on this, and it didn't pan out. I mean, with 2 years down the line, at least I can sort of quite smugly say that our approach was the right one. And certainly what didn't happen is there weren't any Ed 209 robots off Robocop coming to shoot you if you weren't compliant with GDPR. They've actually taken a quite pragmatic approach from the Information Commissioner's Office as well. Now, what I felt they would do is they become a cost neutral body, so the fines would actually end up paying for their enforcement officers. And as I've said previously, they got about £400,000 from TalkTalk. You can see how they can use that to pay their own bills, and if they hire more enforcement officers, they're likely to increase their revenue charges. Now, I think that they are going for the low-hanging fruit. They're going after the big companies who are serial offenders, even not first-time offenders. They're taking it very sensibly, and I think they're building their own capabilities and numbers. And I think, yeah, I still agree with what I put on this slide several years ago. They will eventually move into the SME market, and I think if the law doesn't force you to make these changes to your business and look at cybersecurity and GDPR a bit more seriously, then I think your insurance companies will eventually stipulate it as well, especially if you're trying to take protection against cybersecurity risks.
Ke fela nkare ke Sandra Bullock. Nna ke le kopo. Ke metsi a pula ke a lelemela ke le planka kgawa le fela ke mabele ke hloka bophela. Ikwale le njengawo. Phambene nana ukasiya dawo kodwa wena ngizomshiya
So with that video, I did want to make an important point, and it wasn't actually don't run away, although it is kind of, I don't want you to run away from your responsibilities, but essentially you need to be better than your competition. You need to be one of the ones that isn't going to be one of the low-hanging fruit. Although this law, GDPR, is not actually fully tested in laws, even 2 years after producing this slide deck, we still don't really know how it's going to be applied. There's been a few court cases which has given us an understanding of where it's going, but we still don't know. I think mainly your strategy should be better to be better than your industry peers by doing so and taking steps like going for standards and just being that much above what the law is asking for. It puts you apart and it keeps you ready. These fines will be coming. I think although the sales and marketing engine of the IT industry tried to scare you a couple of years ago and wouldn't stop spamming you with emails, the serious point is that it's still likely to happen. And I think a lot of what happened 2 years ago with the sales and marketing, as I said on the slide of the carry on, it kind of undermined the way GDPR has been taken. Everyone just didn't take it seriously, and there was a lot of charlatans out there saying things like even jobbing builders would have to take care of the personal information of their customers, including their mobile phone numbers that they store on their mobile phones. It was just taking it to the far end, and it just wasn't really true, and I don't think that will ever come true. But if you're a serious SME business, being ready just means taking that bare minimum standard, bare minimum step, and becoming recognized to a standard like Cyber Essentials or ISO 27001. So moving on to standards, I like to say there's two types. There's prescriptive ones and the descriptive ones. So the descriptive ones are pretty much written in plain English. They're dead easy to try and achieve because you're literally told you must do this. Are you doing this? You're asked questions in plain English. It's either yes or it's no. It's quite easy to do, and it's better for smaller organizations to work on those type of standards. The other ones are the prescriptive ones, which generally are written by a top-level organization of experts who've come together and produced a standard, and it's like the International Standards Organization, ISO, and what they've done is generally given you a framework, and you take that framework based on your risk assessment, create a top-level manual and all the policies and procedures, and apply them directly to your business and how you how your company operates, and it's very much bespoke. It requires a lot of expertise, it requires time, generally consultants are involved, and then you need the auditors to come out and assess you to see whether you've met those requirements. Small companies find that a struggle, but generally government organizations are starting to stipulate that those for their supply chain companies. So this slide just kind of takes that and parallels. ISO 27001 is one of those prescriptive standards, and Cyber Essentials descriptive. And one requires more investment than the other. one's more practical, one's more documentary, and that's really how you should think about these things. So as we were talking more about Cyber Essentials and GDPR in this presentation, I just wanted to sort of point out what the different types were. There's the basic certificate, which is simply generally a self-assessment that you do yourself, although my business does actually offer consultancy in terms of how you fill in those, and especially if you're not au fait with your IT systems, we can help with that. And then there's the plus one, and the main difference is with the plus certificate, we actually send out an auditor to come and check your systems. And generally there's 5 technical requirements. You're looking at your security of your internet connections, such as firewalls, securing your devices and software, which is making sure that things are locked away in some cases. There's some practical evidence on that, as well as the software controls on that, like your antivirus and malware protection. And then there's controls in place looking after your data and keeping it safe, and keeping everything up to date with patch management. So there's those type of areas you need to consider in it. For us as a business, the main sort of thing that we do is this fixed price Cyber Essentials Plus package, where we provide consultancy. And what we do with Cyber Essentials, it's kind of a pass or a fail thing. So once you've put your questionnaire and your documentation in, it goes off to be assessed by a company like CFA, and if it doesn't meet the requirements, you fail, and you pay up front for this. So what we do as a service is we help you fill in the questionnaires, and we then we test them ourselves to make sure you're likely to be compliant, and then put them into the system ready to get your certificate at the end of it. With the plus as well, you've got internal vulnerability scans, so it does actually give you a little bit more than that baseline than the Cyber Essentials basic standard. It gives you the ability to actually have some peace of mind that your systems are as they should be, and you have a good level of cyber compliance in your company. An important point to note here is for impartiality is that Unleashed are a consultancy business, and CFA are an assessment, accreditation, and audit company. And whilst we can't guarantee that you can pass, because we're functionally separate, we can help you to make sure that you've got a good certainty of passing. So there's no guarantees in this. It is a fair test, and we have to work towards that. And we can give you the advice that you need to get your systems in order to put the questionnaire on the system ready to get your certificate at the end of it. So in summary, and in particular in the COVID-19 pandemic, the threat landscape has got bigger. We've changed aspects. We've got people working from home. Hackers have actually started taking advantage of that. I've seen instances already that these attacks on Office 365 have got bigger. The attack surface got bigger because we've put computers in people's homes that weren't previously there full time, and things have changed. And companies large and small have been hit with these attacks. They vary in scope. It's changed completely, and we believe firmly that using a tool like Cyber Essentials as a standard creates that baseline of confidence in your business, and it will reduce your risk of being subject to GDPR enforcement, because you not only proving that you're taking those bare minimum measures, you're actually doing it, and that tends to set you apart from your competition. And if you want further information on it, on Cyber Essentials, and you want a bit more information about this, you're quite welcome to reach out to us and we'll have a chat. We're kind of friendly, and if you want to hear more, then please do just reach out to us. And I'd like to thank you for listening.